Good morning. I want to talk today about the lunar month for countries and people, part two, from November 1st through November 30th. So let's see if I can share my screen and then we can get started. So just give me a few minutes here, and I've got to get rid of some panels so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, and I think we're ready. So this is the lunar month for countries and people, part two. Putin, Russia, Ukraine, King Charles, Kate Middleton, United Kingdom, and Pope Francis from November 1st through November 30th. And we'll start with Putin. From time to time, I mentioned there is some dispute over his birth data, but it has been confirmed by Putin's webmaster, and it seems to work well. And this is the chart that everyone seems to use. So I'll continue using it. Now, he has about three hard aspects for this upcoming lunar month and three soft aspects. So they kind of balance each other out in a way. The hard aspects involve Neptune more than anything else. So that suggests possibly some delusion, misinformation, weakness of boundaries on his part. And let's see what we have in particular. Transiting Neptune is making a sesquiquadrate to natal Venus. That's in his first house. So it really affects him personally. And Venus is also the ruler of Libra, which is his sun sign. So, uh, based upon the astrology and based upon current events, this tends to suggest more delusional thinking on Putin's part. Uh, we all know his delusions and lies about Ukraine. He might actually have some paranoia about enemies and things of that sort going on. And with transiting Neptune making a square to his natal Mars, perhaps he should be worried about assassination. This could refer to, among other things, assassination attempts on him, but also uh, passions and delusional thinking that stirs up his aggressive tendencies. And let's see, he also has Jupiter making a sesquiquadrate to his natal ascendant. Whenever Jupiter is making a hard aspect, there's always a tendency to overreach, to overdo things, or to overthink things in some way. Jupiter is in the eighth house of death and transformation. So this may be discomforting news about more Russian deaths in the war with Ukraine. So there are going to be some tensions, some delusions on his part, maybe even some attacks on him. And there could be a tendency to overdo or overreach in many instances. But on the good side, he has some nice aspects, particularly involving Jupiter, and those are really going to be lifelines to him, which will probably help him persevere for now. Transiting Chiron is making a sextile to the natal north node, which means it's making a trine to the south node, and that is going to intensify some healing energy for him. Transiting Jupiter is trine the north node, which means it is making a sextile to the south node. And we also have transiting Jupiter making a trine to natal Saturn. Any sort of coordination between Jupiter and Saturn is good because these control uh, the complementary drives of one, growth expansion for Jupiter, and stability regulation contraction for Saturn. And when those drives are working in harmony with themselves, that's always a good thing. Now, notice the configuration which is being made here. We have his natal north node, sextile, transiting Chiron, which is making a sextile to transiting Jupiter, which is making a sextile to the south node, also a trine to the north node, and Chiron's making a trine to the south node. And then the south node is making a sextile. The natal south node makes a sextile to uh, natal Saturn, which is making that trine with Jupiter. So you have some outer planets here which are interacting with natal planets in a very nicely integrated, coordinated fashion. So again, I think Putin will endure for now as a result of the way these good aspects are going to be working together. Now, I also, as you might see, I have put dates out here for those aspects that will become exact during the lunar month. The lunar month is basically all of November this time. The two coincide. And here again, you can see with these bars which aspects are easy, which ones are going to be hard, how intense they're going to be, how long they last, and dates that they become exact during the lunar month, if they do indeed become exact. And it looks like the bad stuff is going to be probably well countered by the good aspects. So we'll see what happens with Mr. Putin in November. Now, for Russia itself, I don't expect things to go so smoothly. There's a lot more hard aspects than soft aspects, and planets which are often involved in the hard aspects. We have Jupiter, Jupiter, Jupiter three times. Uh, so that means problems with growth. Again, when there are hard aspects involving Jupiter, there's often a tendency toward overreach or to overdo something. We also have Pluto involved here and here, and not Pluto, but Mars, which is seen as sort of a lower octave of Pluto. So Pluto Mars also involved in these hard aspects, and that has to do with hardship, aggression, war, things of that sort. Uh, Saturn sextile Uranus, that will help. Chiron trine Mars will help bring some healing on the side. So again, transiting Pluto sesquiquadrate natal Jupiter. While Pluto is near the cusp of the seventh house, which has to do with others, probably other countries are going to make growth difficult for Russia. Transiting Jupiter, sesquiquadrate, natal Saturn, that's here and here. Again, the actions of other groups. Transiting Jupiter is going through the 11th house. So this is going to be group creativity. And the actions of groups will probably add to the restrictions or barriers to Russia's growth. Transiting Uranus, sesquiquadrate, the north node. Let's see, here's transiting Uranus, and we've got the north node here, so it's going to make a semi-square to the south node. That is just going to energize some of the forces for change. This could be pressure for change coming from outside groups, since Uranus is in the 11th house. Transiting Jupiter is opposite natal Mars. Interestingly, if we look at the July 2nd 1776 chart for America that I use. That chart has Mars at 19 degrees Gemini. Russia has Mars at 19 degrees Sagittarius, just directly opposite America's Mars. So it's no wonder that these two countries are such adversaries. And if you go back before this, let's see, 1991 chart for the new Russia, go back to the old Soviet Union, you found discord between the chart for America and the chart for the Soviet Union, too. So this is nothing new, it's just a continuation. But with transiting Jupiter in opposition to Mars, well, that could be more war, more aggression. Or it could also be internal fights within the country. Okay, and we have transiting Pluto still opposite the ascendant, so Russia is still a pariah. It's essentially being oppressed by other countries, the other neighboring countries that don't like what Russia is doing. On the good side, though, transiting Saturn is making a sextile to natal Uranus. Uranus is in the sixth house. So for the country, this has to do with the workers. So there may be some stability to worker labor concerns, for instance. And transiting Chiron is making a trine to natal Mars, and that will help uh, strengthen the country. And let's see what else I can see here. It looks like Mars rules Aries, which is on the cusp of the 10th house. So that will also help strengthen uh, Putin's hand and help strengthen the leaders of the country. Okay. Again, I've put some dates here when those aspects which become exact are exact. So Jupiter opposite natal Mars, that's going to be exact November 15th, mid-month. That's a date to watch out for. Okay. It's interesting that Jupiter is sesquiquadrate Saturn. That occurs on the day of the American presidential election. So I wonder how and if those two things will be related or interact with one another in some way. If this is a frustrating time for Russia, then that may indicate that or suggest that Harris rather than Trump will win the election. Okay, now if we take a look at Ukraine, they have a lot more hard aspects than soft aspects, so the soft aspects will certainly help out. And we see a lot of these hard aspects involve Uranus, so we can expect the unexpected in November for Ukraine. And we have some hard aspects involving Jupiter here, here, and also here. So there could be some limits or disruption to growth in Ukraine, or they could have a tendency to overdo or overreach in some ways. Okay, now we begin with transiting Neptune, making a sesquiquadrate to the midheaven. Transiting Neptune is going through Ukraine's second house. This has to do with resources. So a weakness in resources that could affect the leadership in the country. There could also be some misinformation that affects leadership. Transiting Uranus is going to be making a square to natal Mercury and also to natal Jupiter. And these planets are in the eighth house, which has to do with death and transformation, other people's resources. So again, there could be more death as a result of this horrific war. There could be a sudden uh, disruption in supplies of needed resources coming from other countries. Uh, some sort of disruption to Ukraine's growth and their luck. Transiting Uranus is also making a sesquiquadrate to natal Uranus, which is conjunct the cusp of the first house. So, yes, a lot of unexpected surprises and events for Ukraine, most likely in November. This one would be exact on November 20th. Jupiter is going to semi-square natal Chiron on November 17th, just slightly before. And so let's see, that could result in some wounding for the people of Ukraine. And Jupiter sesquiquadrate natal Saturn, well, just as when you have a good aspect between Jupiter and Saturn, it keeps things humming along properly. When you have a square or a difficult aspect between them, we have a sesquiquadrate, then growth and regulation get out of balance with one another. So there are going to be some sort of missteps likely as a result of this aspect. But transiting Uranus makes a trine to natal Mars that will help quite a bit with military efforts and the energy of the country. And transiting Saturn is making a trine to the midheaven, and that bodes well for uh, Zelensky and other leadership in the country. This will help stabilize their status. So, overall, a lot of unexpected things, maybe some impairment of their luck, and some miscoordinated steps, which result in overreach or overdoing things. But a few lifelines to help save the country. Again, you can see here when each of these aspects will be strongest and when and if they become exact during the month of November. And it's interesting that Uranus will be sesquiquadrate natal Uranus on the 20th, the same day that's making a trine to natal Mars. So we have both good and bad things going on that day. And right before that is the Jupiter semi-square Chiron, which can result in an increase in wounding. All right, let's move to another part of the world and take a look at King Charles. Again, he has many more bad aspects uh, than good aspects. His good aspects will be important lifelines, though. His bad aspects, a lot of them involve Jupiter, which suggests that, again, he may be trying to do too much, or in some ways, there is going to be a tendency for overreach and overdoing things. Uh, he has a bad aspect involving Chiron and Saturn. That's not going to be good for his health. And transiting Pluto square moon is going to definitely uh, be a bad sign for his health and the treatment of his cancer. I think this square will probably become exact in December, but we'll see shortly. I have some dates here when things do become exact. You can see these dates, they range from November 2nd through November 5th. So the first week of November uh, may be a little harder than some of the remaining weeks. So if we start out with transiting Chiron, making a sesquiquadrate to his natal Saturn, well, this can be some additional wounding for him. Saturn is considered a malefic. When we have a hard aspect, that's probably not going to bring out the good side of Chiron, the transcendent side, the healing side, but rather the wounding side. And It can affect his status since Chiron is going through his 10th house. Transing Pluto square natal moon. Let's jump over here. Yeah, it looks like that is exact on December 9th. So it just gets stronger and stronger throughout November. And even though Chiron, sesquiquadrate natal Saturn, is exact on November 5th, it lasts the entire month too. Uh, so that's not good news for uh, the health of King Charles. Transiting Jupiter is going to be making an opposition to natal Mars. And let's see. Yeah, that's interesting uh, because King Charles's natal Mars is also in opposition to America's natal Mars, just as Russia's is. So I wonder what King Charles really thinks of America. But Jupiter opposite his natal Mars, that could again affect his physical health. He could try and do too much. That could result in accident or relapse. Transing Jupiter is also making a sesquiquadrate to his natal Mercury. So again, he's going to be in a frame of mind where he might rationalize why he needs to do more than he should. And transiting Jupiter will be making a semi-square uh, to the natal north node, which means it's making a sesquiquadrate to the south node. And again, that just intensifies this expansive quality of Jupiter, making it more likely that he will uh, perhaps overextend himself in some way. And transiting Jupiter semi-square, the ascendant, that just reiterates everything I said about trying to do too much. So he may have a health crisis as transiting Pluto gets closer to squaring his moon. Uh, he may have signs of more wounding in early November, around November 5th. He will have a tendency in early November to really overdo things, and that could be bad for his overall health. However, transiting Chiron is making a trine to his Mars that will help strengthen his constitution. And also, Mars rules his 10th house, which is his status and position in society. So, this will help strengthen his ability to rule while others are challenging his ability to rule. And transiting Neptune will trine his natal Chiron. This will help bring in some healing energy to him. So, still a challenging month for King Charles, but he has some lifelines, which will likely be very helpful. And we see some of these good aspects are in the process of fading, and the other good aspects don't kick in until almost at the end of the month. So, yeah, it may be that what predominates throughout most of the month is the Chiron sesquiquadrate, Saturn, and transiting Pluto square natal moon. He starts out with some of the healing energy and effect, but uh, as the month goes on, that fades and the difficulties begin. Okay, if we look at Kate Middleton, she might have a bit of a relapse, but also some healing at the same time. She still has some challenging aspects, and you can see two of them involve Chiron, one of them involves Saturn, and Mars and Pluto are involved. So these can involve wounding and restriction, and Uranus can cause some sudden changes in fortune. So we begin with transiting Uranus sesquiquadrant, natal Mars, and this could affect her energy levels suddenly. And since Uranus is going through her 10th house, it can impact her status as a member of the royal family. She may not be able to do as much as she wants. Transiting Jupiter is going to semi-square uh, her midheaven, and so she will have a tendency also to overdo and overreach. She may want to take on more tasks than she should at this point. Transing Saturn is making a sesquiquadrant to natal Pluto, and that is not at all good. Both of these planets can be considered malefics. They're in a hard aspect with one another. Saturn is in her 8th house of death and transformation. Not good. Pluto rules death and transformation. This suggests some further restriction and oppression on her health. Transing Chiron, meanwhile, is making a square to her natal sun and to her natal moon. And this causes a lot of wounding to her uh, body and soul. Now, on the good side, transiting Chiron is also trine her ascendant, and transiting Jupiter is sextile her ascendant. These are going to be very important and much needed lifelines. They will help heal and strengthen her. And so I'm hopeful that she will come through the difficulties shown by the heart aspects, uh, that she will come through these difficulties intact and eventually heal. Now, I've put some dates when some of these aspects will become exact. And we can see the Jupiter semi-square midheaven is exact on the 3rd. So in that first week, she may also tend to overdo things. Uh, but Jupiter will be making that sextile to her ascendant on the 6th. So that's a bit of recovery. Uranus sesquiquadrant Mars is exact on the 11th. That could be a physical energy, some tremendous impulsiveness on her uh, part, some sort of change in her physical energy, uh, an accident, anger, all sorts of things could happen, but that is immediately followed by the exact trine of Chiron to her ascendant. So again, the bad things followed by some healing. And let's see that Uranus sesquiquadrant Mars, that's an effect throughout the entire month. And Chiron square her sun, that is in effect throughout most of the month. It will become exact next calendar and lunar month on December 9th. And transing Chiron square her moon will be gaining strength also. So December of this year, January of next, that's when the healing crisis could be most evident. So some things will probably happen this month, but she immediately gets some relief from whatever those conditions are. Fortunately, the Saturn sesquiquadrant Pluto, it's in effect through most of the month, but not very strong. Okay, I'll take a sip of water, then we'll look at the UK. And let's see, for the United Kingdom, we have a variety of hard aspects this month, and I put dates when some of these things become exact during the lunar month. Uh, we see here some aspects from Chiron, which can cause wounding, hard aspects from Jupiter, which can cause overdoing things, Uranus, which can cause unexpected events. So, transiting Chiron is square natal moon, exact on November 29th. Interestingly, the natal moon in the chart for the United Kingdom, it looks like that is going to be the same position as the natal moon in Princess Kate's chart. Yeah, she has hers at 18 degrees. No, it's not, isn't it? Let me go back here a second. Oh, yeah, it is. My eyesight was, it gets worse as I get older, and so I was misreading something for a second. If we go back here to Kate Middleton's chart, Princess Kate has the moon at 18 degrees, 42 minutes of Cancer. That's very close to the UK moon at 19 degrees. Let's see, what is it? 26 minutes of Cancer. So she, she and the country really resonate with one another. And if Transient Chiron is square the moon, that affects uh, Princess Kate, and it affects the entire country, actually. Okay, and let's see, Princess Kate's sun is at roughly 19 degrees of Capricorn. The UK sun is at roughly 10 degrees of Capricorn, so they make a wide conjunction, but they're in the same sign, so that's an additional resonance between the United Kingdom and Princess Kate. But transing Chiron square the natal moon, this can represent some sort of wounding, first to the people, because the moon, a mundane chart, usually represents the people, but the moon is in the 10th house. So this could also be a wounding to the rulers, the people with power in the country. That could be the prime minister, that could be Princess Kate, that could be a member, King Charles, or any other member of the royal family, or anyone else in the country who has power and status. Transiting Neptune is going to be making a semi-square to natal Mars. Uh, that could weaken the economy in some way, because Mars is in the 8th house, which rules other countries' resources, so maybe some trade problems. The 8th house is also the house of death, so maybe a prominent death in November. Transiting Uranus is going to be making a sesquiquadrant uh, to the natal sun. The sun is in the 4th house, which rules the people, but the sun in a mundane chart also often represents the ruler. So this could be some sudden change involving either the people or the ruler of the country. Transiting Chiron is making a sesquiquadrant to natal Chiron. Again, that's probably going to coincide with some sort of wounding, particularly since transiting Chiron is also square the natal moon. Okay, transiting Jupiter is opposite natal Mercury. Again, tendency to do too much, say too much. Entrancing Jupiter is semi-square. Natal Jupiter. Uh, natal Jupiter is in the 10th house. Again, that represents rulers. That could be rulers in parliament, prime minister, financial rulers, people with power, or it could be members of the royal family, King Charles, Princess Kate, and so on. So something gets overdone regarding perhaps the royal family. This could involve, as I said, Princess Kate or King Charles, or maybe it's something involving Prince Harry. If negotiations or contacts are still being made with regard to their situations. Now, again, there are some important lifelines. Transiting Saturn will be making a sextile to natal Mars that will help stabilize the difficult aspects surrounding Mars. And transiting Jupiter is going to make a trine to natal Venus, and that is very, very favorable. So, something favorable is going on with the country. Something will help bring about some good feelings. Now, unfortunately, that Jupiter trine Venus doesn't really kick in until almost the end of the lunar month. It will become exact, though, on December 5th. So, toward the end of the month, some good news. Saturn sextile Mars, it's in effect through a lot of the lunar month, but it's not overly strong. So, that leaves us with some difficult transits to deal with. We have Uranus sesquiquadrate Sun is exact on November 18th. So look for unexpected news. And we have Jupiter opposite Mercury exact on the 28th. And Chiron square Moon on the 29th becomes exact. So there may be some news followed by a wounding of some sort for the United Kingdom. Well, I hope nothing really bad happens, but these are possibilities. These are moments of heightened probability that something bad does happen. Doesn't make it a certainty. As I always say, this is just a weather report, and the astrological weather report is only half of the equation. The other half is our own free will and what we decide to do in response to the various tensions that we experience. Okay. And lastly, let's take a look at Pope Francis. He's had a lot of difficult aspects uh, these past few months. Some of the good aspects I think are now increasing. He's very advanced in years and frail health, but he has access to the best medical care in the world, I'm sure. And so that is probably keeping him going. But in different circumstances, he might have already passed away. I still think it's likely that he will leave the papacy maybe before the end of the year or not much longer thereafter. There's also always a chance of severe illness or death in his case. Now, he has transiting Chiron opposite his natal Mars. So let's see, here's Chiron up here, Mars down here. So this can refer to wounding to the physical body. That's one possibility. Transiting Pluto is square his midheaven. Oh, that will be exact on November 23rd. So this is a pressure for a change in his status in this world. And transiting Chiron opposite Mars, that is exact on November 26th, not long thereafter. So change in status immediately being followed by some wounding or the possibility of wounding. Certainly, if he stepped down from the papacy, or if he just had no choice, that would certainly fit. As transiting Neptune, semi-square, the natal moon, that can indicate some sort of illness or infection or a weakening of the physical constitution in his case. Transiting Uranus semi-square natal ascendant, which is exact on November 22nd, right before Pluto squares his midheaven, which is right before Chiron opposite his Mars. Okay, transiting Uranus, square, semi-square, his natal ascendant, that indicates some sort of sudden change in his life. Now, he also has transiting Saturn, sesquiquadrant, natal Pluto. Pluto's in his first house, so that affects him personally. Pluto and Saturn, they're both malefics. Saturn is restriction, Pluto is death and transformation. So again, that doesn't look good. And then we have some aspects involving Jupiter, which indicates a tendency to overreach. We have transiting Jupiter, uh, making a semi-square to his natal Uranus. Uh, that is in the 10th house. So again, trying to overdo things as leader. Transiting Jupiter, square his natal Neptune. That could result in confusion or in uh, infection of some sort. Transiting Jupiter square Saturn. Again, I've said it's great when Jupiter and Saturn are working together harmoniously. That's when your engine is just humming. You've got that balance between growth and regulation. Here, they're out of balance. Okay, and at his age, anything out of balance can be a problem. He will have transiting Jupiter conjunct his natal Chiron on November 4th. That will be exact. And transiting Chiron will sextile his natal Chiron. That's exact on November 5th. So the month is probably going to begin well with some healing, but a lot of these harder aspects become exact during the last week of the month. So things begin well, but they may not end well. Transiting Neptune is trine his natal Pluto. That can help his constitution since Pluto's in his first house. Transiting Jupiter will be trine his natal Mars. That can also help counter some negative aspects involving Mars, the Chiron opposite his natal Mars. This will help strengthen him. And transiting Saturn is going to be sextile his natal Mercury. Uh, that will give him control over speech, so he will be able to communicate well, most likely. Mercury is near the cusp of his seventh house, so he will work well with others during this period. Okay, and if we look here to see when things are most in effect, when they become exact, we see the good aspects. A lot of them tend to happen early on. Chiron sextile Chiron on the 5th. Uh, Jupiter trine Mars on the 11th. Jupiter conjunct Chiron. It's in red here because my program always puts conjunctions in red, but in this case, it's a very benefic planet in conjunction with Chiron, so that's going to bring out the better side, the healing side, the transcendent side. So some of the good stuff happens early on in November, but then starts to fade and the bad stuff gets stronger. And that last bit, it all begins with Jupiter square Neptune on the 16th, followed by Uranus semi-square the ascendant on the 22nd, Pluto square the midheaven on the 23rd, Chiron in opposition to Mars on the 26th. So first part of the month looks better for Pope Francis. The second half of the month, keep an eye out for news on what's going on. Okay. Well, that is going to be it for the lunar month for countries and people part two. So let me stop sharing my screen. And I see I'm back and I'm real fuzzy. Let me see if I can get my camera to focus a little better. I hate to go out as a blur. So let's, there. I'm looking better now. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, found it informative. I hope you also watched my video on the lunar month for countries and people, part one. And as we get closer to the end of November, let's see, oh, I'm sorry, end of October. It's October 26th now. As we get closer to the end of October, I'll record my video on just sort of the general indications of the lunar month for the world, talk about the world in general and not any countries or people in particular. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoy me for more videos, and I hope you have an interest in mundane astrology. I hope you also have an interest in scientific evidence-based astrology. That's the other thing I do. You don't see as many videos about that up here, but I uh, do statistical analysis, mathematical modeling, and I produce articles which get published in peer-reviewed journals. Okay, and that is where the future of astrology lies if we want to be considered more than just mere fortune telling. We have to support uh, those who are making the efforts to do real scientific analysis and verification of astrology. And there's a lot out there, I can guarantee you. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox for now. And again, I hope you join me again. And for now, I'll just say so long and be well.